Hello student, welcome again to this class of business studies. In our previous classes, we have seen and discussed about the various features of company forms of business organization. We have also discussed the process of formation of a company. Today we shall discuss about a slight difference between the public company and private company, or rather when company is the types of a company to be discussed in our syllabus is confined only to private and public company. One of the important documents of a company is the Article of Association, which internally regulates the management and lays down the various rules of internal procedures for execution of works or internal management. It is the main document concerned with the indoor management of the enterprise or a company. Now this document, it plays a very major role in distinguishing between a private company and a public company. As regarding the meaning of a public company and private company, we can generally say that a public company is a company which is owned and traded publicly. What I mean, a large number of people have subscribed to the share wherein they become the owner of the company after subscribing to the capital of the company, whereas in a private company, it is a company that is owned and trading, or they're trading by privately. These company, the private company, are owned by private individuals. The funds, the capital are provided by private individuals and they trade privately. So therefore, a private company has an ownership of individuals, whereas a public company has ownership of a group or group of public. The Article of Association lays down, or as the definition is laid down in the Companies Act, it points out that private company is a company which by its Article of Association lays down certain conditions, and these conditions are that a private company, in a private company, the Article of Association, it puts a restriction on the right of the member to transfer the shares. The members of a private company do not have a right to transfer their shares. Then the second is the number of members in a private company. Minimum number is 2 and maximum number is restricted to 200. The members cannot exceed, the maximum number of members cannot exceed 200 in a private company, and the minimum quorum to form or constitute a private company is 2. So any 2 person can form a private company. Then prohibits any invitation to general public to subscribe for its shares. Now this points out that since a private company cannot publish its prospectus, which is an important document inviting the public for subscribing to the shares, and therefore this is there, that it prohibits any invitation. A private company cannot invite the general public to subscribe to the share of the company. There is strictly limited, it is strictly restricted. It cannot directly sales the share or offer the share to the public for subscription. And finally we have must have a paid up capital, and this paid up capital was earlier in a private company, it was 1 lakh rupees, quite old. But later on, this paid up capital has been increased. Maybe, I exactly don't remember at present what is, I don't have a current data. So, where this capital was restricted to 1 lakh, whereas in a public company, the capital was restricted to 5 lakh. So as regarding this, so therefore when the Article of Association places down these restrictions, these norms for defining a private and a public company. So any company which qualifies these criteria can be termed as a private company. Now, the merit of a private company is that it is very easy to form, because any two member can join and they can form a company. Not much legal requirement is required to carry out, like publication of prospectus or capital subscription stage. So it can simply comply. It can, after incorporation, the business can start. After incorporation, it gets its legal identity and can start a business. The formation is therefore very easy. Then it is less legal formality that is associated with the formation stages itself. As I have discussed, that this company do not have to abide by legal procedure or legal prospect of publishing the prospectus and other documents of the company. Then there is secrecy, because in a private company, the members, they choose among themselves, they among themselves decide who is going to be the person who will be looking after the business or looking after the affairs of the company. They themselves are the owner, they themselves are the managers, and therefore there are greater chances of secrecy being maintained. Similarly, it has the advantage of prompt decision. Quick decision can be taken. In a private company, they do not have to consult any other outsiders or members, or they do not have to place some important issues for discussion. Here, therefore, the benefit of prompt decision. And finally, the management is better, since the member among themselves, they are the owner as well as the manager of the business. Therefore, they works in the best interest of the business of the company, and therefore this types of company has a better management ability. As regarding the demerits, there is very limited resources. These limited resources is confined to the capacity of the individual members to provide finance and to borrow the funds from the market. The second is poor protection of interest. Now there are greater chances of dispute among the members in terms of sharing of profit or on any other personal issues. And since these person, they are not very expert in the managing a business affair, they lack the personal quality of a manager, or they are not qualified managers, and therefore they have a very poor protection of interest and poor managerial skill. Finally, we have state preference. This types of company, it is not provided any sort of state preferences or patronage by the government, and therefore there are chances that if they suffers from any scarcity of finance, then this company will not be revived. They will not be addressed. Their problem will not be addressed by the government. They have to address their problem themselves, and therefore their life is unstable. So these are the demerits of private company and merits of private company. As regarding public company, a company which by its article of association, it is just exactly the definition that we have studied over there. It is quite exactly opposite of private company. So a company which is not a private company, as simply said, or we can say a company which by its article of members at association restrict the minimum number of person to 7 and maximum number of person is unlimited. As per the 2013 Amendment Act, the maximum number is unlimited, and that is contrary to the private company. So therefore, the company which restrict the minimum number to 7 and maximum number to unlimited, then these company do not places any restriction on the right of the member to transfer their share or sell their share. There is no limitation. The member of a public company can freely transfer or sell their shares to any third parties. Then these company, since they issue prospectus, it is an important document, and therefore they are free to place their capital for subscription, or they can invite the public for subscribing to the shares of the company or to the capitals of the company. And therefore this company has a right to invite the public for subscribing to the shares or to the subscription of the company that is floated by the company. And then the minimum paid up capital of this company was 5 lakh, but it was increased. We will discuss about it later on. There are certain special privileges that is enjoyed by the private company as well as public company. We will discuss this privilege on the basis of numbers of members. The advantage of a private company is that it can start with only two members, whereas for a public company, the minimum quorum required is 7. At least there has to be 7 persons to form a company. Then the second is allotment before minimum subscription. We have discussed that in the capital subscription stage, a public company cannot go for allotment of share unless it has received 90% of the issued share capital. That means if it has not received the minimum subscription, it cannot proceed straight away with the allotment of shares. Whereas a private company can, even without receiving the minimum subscription, can go for allotment of shares. So there is no restriction on allotment of share even without receiving the minimum subscription by a private company. Then the next is exemption from issue of prospectus. Now the private company is not bound to issue a prospectus of its own, whereas a public company must have a prospectus of its own before it make the subscription public, or before it invites the public for subscribing to the shares. It has to publish the prospectus, and that has to be mandatory, or it is mandatory to publish that. Then there is commencement of business. We have discussed that immediately after incorporation, a private company has an advantage to start up a business, but a public company cannot unless it receives a certificate of commencement of business. Unless a commencement of business certificate is received by a public company, it cannot start its business. So this is another advantages that a private company enjoys. Then there is statutory meeting or quorum of meeting. As regarding the numbers of members who has to be present in the annual general meeting, wherein it would be deemed that the meeting was legally carried out or it was legally held. So as regarding the public company, there has to be 5 members, at least 5 board members has to be present in the decorum, as a rule for the meeting to be legally held. And as regarding the private company, only 2 members must be present. That is a sufficient requirement for a meeting. So in regard to the decorum of meeting, private company also has an advantages that they can complete the decorum only with 2 members. Then there is exemption regarding directors. A public company must have at least 3 directors. That is mandatory. There should be at least 3 directors that is required in a public company. Whereas in a private company, there should be only 2 directors. Only 2 persons can be acting as a director, whereas in a public company, there has to be have a 3 directors. So that is the minimum numbers of directors. So these are the privileges which a private company enjoys. As regarding the holding of statutory meeting is concerned, it is very necessary, it is mandatory that after the company is incorporated, a statutory meeting must be held. Whereas for a private company, it is optional. The statutory meeting is optional. It may carry out, it may not carry out a statutory meeting. So, these were some of the privileges that a private company receives. This is for today's discussion. We will discuss later for further in the class. Till then, keep learning.